If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram at @fitnessmama, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome back to the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Today I am chatting with Claire, who is a mum of two young children and a maternal child health nurse and midwife and founder of Safe Hands Early Parenting. And I'm talking to Claire today about mental health in the postpartum period. In this episode today, Claire combines her professional and personal experience to help expectant parents and those already in the thick of it feel empowered and more supported in their experience of raising their baby or toddler. So today we're discussing mental health, and Claire really shares with us some important information that I think is so important for us all. She discusses some really practical and tangible tips to help all parents to feel better emotionally. So in today's episode, Claire discusses the difference between a tough day and a week and postnatal depression or anxiety. She also discusses the differences between postnatal depression and anxiety. And she discusses some practical steps that you can do at home to help the situation, but also where to seek help and how to seek help. And there's quite a few different options available. So whether or not you're just having a tough day or a tough week or month, this episode, no doubt, I trust you'll find really helpful. Before I do dive into this episode, I would love to invite you to come and join Fitness Mama. As we mentioned in this episode, there's such a strong correlation between physical health and mental health. And if you would like support to move your body, reclaim your pelvic floor core and strength safely in the comfort of your home, then this is all available with a 7-day free trial to Fitness Mama. Perhaps you're busy, perhaps you've lost the motivation, perhaps you're not sure about the best exercises for you, then join us for these convenient, short, easy, quality workouts that you can do from the comfort of your home whilst your bubba sleeps or whilst your toddler runs around causing havoc or at the end of a long day at work. So head to fitnessmama.com and the link is in the show notes for the free 7-day trial. Right, let's get into this episode today with Claire. Claire, thank you so much for joining me today on the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. So we are discussing all things supporting your mental health in the postpartum period. So thank you. Such an important topic.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to have a chat. And yes, I completely agree. This is something that we need to be speaking a lot more about. So I can't wait to get into it with you today.
Yeah. So you're a child maternal health nurse. Child health nurse, got that mixed up.
Yeah.
You come across this quite a lot day to day. Is that right?
Yes, correct. So, I really feel that my role as a maternal child health nurse is that we have to be as focused on mums as we are on children. I'm sure that there are going to be people listening out there going, no, I feel like it's a very child-focused system, which, everyone operates in their own way. But I really feel like we have to put a lot of focus on the mental health of mums as they make the transition into parenthood and kind of navigate the first 4 years really of early parenthood, because they're the ones that are looking after their baby. And if we don't have a well mum, then by extension, we're not going to have a well baby. So mental health really feeds into that because we know of like such huge time of transition and upheaval when you become a parent. And so having this at the forefront of our minds, of my mind, when I see people as a maternal child health nurse is absolutely crucial to the role that I play in the community, I feel.
Absolutely. And I heard something recently, correct me if I'm wrong, but if a child misses their 2-year-old checkup with a maternal child health nurse, I don't know the stats exactly, but was it 2 times or 3? They're so much more likely to have to go to juvenile jail, what's it called? Yeah, there's a
detention
centre. There's a really massive correlation between the kids that unfortunately end up there and missing their maternal child health nurse appointment.
It is fascinating. I haven't seen any research like in that particular domain, but what we do want to have is we want to build trust within the community so that they can come to us for the support that they will need. And mental health challenges are not something that you're just going to experience in the first 4 weeks, it's really important that we're supporting parents right up until starting or navigating through 4-year-old kinder, really, because we know and we've heard for a long time now how important the first 1,000 days of a child's life is, but really helping and looking at that family unit. How can we identify the strengths and the areas where we can really support you best to navigate those first 1,000 days, especially, is really important in building resilience and building a structure around that child, which means that they don't end up having challenges later on in life.
Yeah, so important. And I remember after having 3 babies, by the time it got to my last appointment with a maternal child health nurse, after 12 years, not that many, but each child to 4, you've built up a quite good relationship if you're able to maintain the same. Not everyone can have the same nurse, but
exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, yeah. Yeah. In the perfect world, there would be continuity of care. I am so lucky that I work within it's a very fast growing community, but it's a smallish one compared to like the middle of Melbourne, for example. And so I do get the continuity of care in seeing the same families for a prolonged period of time. And that does great things for my enjoyment at work, but it does great things for them because they know the face that they're going to come and see. And we know with things like mental health, family violence, all of these slightly taboo areas, it takes continuity and seeing the same person over and over again before you can build that rapport and that relationship. And so, yeah, it's just, I really feel I'm very proud of the role that we can play within the community and really supporting people through a longer period of time rather than in a hospital system where you see someone for your pregnancy, which might be about 5 months total from the time that you walk in to walk out of the doors. Like we've got more longevity in this, which is really special.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you see in terms of what are the common mental health challenges that mums are having in that period?
Yeah, I think that you can probably break it down into key periods, I would say, or key times, especially in that first year, and then obviously ongoing as their children get older. But because we see women so much more often in the first year, I think it goes without saying the baby blues are something that we need to make sure that people know about. That when you experience around about day 4, you've got such a huge drop, your hormonal change that occurs after you give birth and in the days after is so monumental that it can really catch a lot of people off guard. If they're not expecting it, then it can be a really earth-shattering experience to have such extreme feelings of just mood swings and crying for no reason and all of the things. Like it's just that first week can be really tough, and it's all associated with your progesterone and your estrogen completely plummeting after you give birth. So it's something that it's really important for people to know about. But then moving on from that, there are 2 crucial times in the first 12 months that I definitely speak to the women I see a lot about, in that 4-month mark and 8 to 10 months. And a lot of this is associated with a drop off in sleep or our changes in expectations for baby sleep. And we know the correlation between mental health and sleep. If you are getting less sleep, then your mental health is more likely to experience some challenges. And at 4 months in particular, I find that babies will go through, quite commonly will go through some fluctuations in their sleep where we are expecting them to wake up more often overnight. But then coupled with that is a woman's mental health is experiencing these really significant changes in your hormones, maybe associated with starting to get your period again, especially if people are formula feeding, then 4 months can be a really crucial time where they're either getting their first or second period back, which is obviously going to cause some upheaval. But then their relationship with their body, their relationship with themselves, they've been at this for 4 months now, where they may not be getting as much support as what they were in the newborn days when everyone comes over and it's all shiny and new and fun. 4-month-olds aren't as shiny and new anymore. And therefore the support system around women can really struggle at this point, or it can just slightly decrease to the point where that woman then doesn't feel as supported in her own mental health. And then between 8 and 10 months, again, we see a very typical fluctuation in sleep patterns for babies. And then with that, there's more frequent wake ups overnight. Often around this point, women are returning to work. So their identity shift that occurs at this time as a result of simply, I've cemented myself. I kind of understand where I sit in the world as a mum, but now I'm having to move back into this world as the person that I used to be before I became a mum, and how those two things marry. And then that's not even taking into account the mental load that we experience as parents and what that actually does.
And I think that sometimes needs to be number one. That creeps up on us, doesn't it? It creeps up and then bang, it's a massive issue.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just these things we don't realize how much overdrive our brain goes into until you actually sit back and think about it and go, oh yeah, I am asking myself 20 questions every single minute about how my baby's going. And even when they're not there with you, they might be at daycare, but you're thinking, did I pack their bag right? Did I give them everything they need to? Does my child have allergies? Are they exposed to any of those allergens when they're in daycare where I can't control it? What are the other children doing? It's just, it's constant as a parent, and it can be a really overwhelming experience when you haven't done that yet and your brain hasn't done that as a first time mum. It's a lot to all of a sudden take on.
Yeah, I didn't quite appreciate it. You're probably right. There's so many questions we ask ourselves internally that we're probably not even conscious of. Like what you just mentioned. Did I pack a jumper in their daycare bag? Just everything. Have I checked the email? Have I filled in this form? So many.
Exactly. And it's just, we have to think of these things. Yes, they seem like really small questions at the time when you think about it. But if you think of a stacks on situation, there's only so much that we can kind of take at one time. And when that's just daycare. And then we're thinking about, what do we have to make for dinner? What do we have to, is our house clean? And if it's not clean, which mine never is, it's because I just don't have the space to do that. There's so many layers to it. So many layers.
Okay. Well, let's try to peel back all those layers. And I know we could keep talking about all the different, issues and why they happen and all the rest, but let's try to get practical and let's try to help our listeners who, I could probably safely say, any mum or any pregnant woman who's listening to this will benefit from this, because I want to give some practical, tangible tips for people to consider when it comes to helping to support their mental health. So let's get started with that. What would you say are the important things to consider?
First and foremost, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to build this gigantic village of people as new parents, whereas what I really want to get across is that we only really need 1 or 2 people who are our go-tos for if we are not feeling great, or if we need to vent, or we've had a difficult day, or we're really struggling in terms of your mental health exists on a spectrum, right? You can have a bad day, but it doesn't mean that you've got postnatal depression. Postnatal depression, you have to be experiencing these symptoms for 7 to 14 days before we go, okay, is this something that we need to look into deeper? But regardless of where you sit on that, even if you've had a bad day or you're having a very bad month, having 1 or 2 people that you can go to who you can talk to about these issues that you're having and what your mind is doing is so important as a parent. You do not need it's so much more quality over quantity. And we have a lot of pressure on ourselves to build, and mothers groups are fantastic. And having lots of people in your corner is great, but we don't necessarily need that. It's just having about a few trusted people. And then in terms of supporting our mental health moving forward, just really knowing that there are so many supports out there in a healthcare perspective and who you can reach out to if you feel like you aren't just having a bad day. You're not just really having a bad week. This has been something where you've been feeling down, depressed or hopeless for longer than a week, where you can't find enjoyment out of day-to-day life activities, or you worry so much that you change your day-to-day structure because the worry kind of is too overwhelming, then reaching out to your professional support. So if you're in Victoria, a maternal child health nurse, or in other states of Australia, they've got child and family nurses, but it operates very differently from state to state. GPs are absolutely a great source of support and information in terms of if you want to seek support to see a psychologist, for example, then engaging with a GP and getting a mental health treatment plan is your absolute go-to move. That is the first thing that we need to put on our list in order to then move forward and be able to access psychology services at a reduced rate, or a lot of psychology services will bulk bill as well.
Can I just explore that a little bit more? Because I think what you've mentioned is fantastic. So reach out to a maternal child health nurse, your doctor, and potentially get a referral to a psychologist. But those, like in the real world, if a mum's having a moment, a crisis moment, whatever, those take, you've got to book it in for, you're lucky if you can have an appointment tomorrow, but it might be next week or in 3 weeks' time. Like, yes, so we still need to do that. But is there anything that we can access that's immediate?
That's where your helplines really come into play. So PANDA have a fantastic hotline where you can call them, and I'll send you the details so that you can include in your show notes as well. So you can call this helpline and you can receive help and counselling to a certain extent straight away. And you can be pointed in the right direction from that. They can actually assess. Other things like, oh my God, it's just fallen out of my head. What their
Beyond Blue
name is? Lifeline, Beyond Blue. Beyond Blue, I think, is really great for general mental health concerns. PANDA is more focused on postnatal and antenatal depression. So if we're speaking about within that first 12 months, I would actually recommend making contact with PANDA instead of Beyond Blue. But Beyond Blue is a great backup if you happen to not be able to get onto PANDA, for example. Or Lifeline is another one as well. So these are immediate sources of information and support. And there are also going to be people out there who go, oh, well, I don't need someone like this minute, but I want to start something tonight. And I don't want to wait for the chain of things of referrals to psychologists and all that. And there's also fantastic programs like Mum Mood Booster, which I'll also send you the details of to include in show notes. So this is a self-paced six session program, which you can access. The Austin Health in Melbourne have created this online resource, which is completely free to access and is specifically tailored to women in the first year after they give birth who are experiencing any sort of depression or postnatal anxiety symptoms. And they can access this self-directed online help instantly. There is also a dad booster program. So any dads, we know that the rates of postnatal depression in dads is 1 in 10. And that's actually huge. So 1 in 10 men, if they could access this program, which is Dad Booster, again, I'll send you the information so that you can include it in the show notes. And that's self-paced, especially if people are hesitant to take those steps to see the GP or to speak to a professional about this. They can access these programs from their home.
And can
which
you
is brilliant.
access
so
this
exciting.
Anonymously as well?
It's a great question. I don't actually know. I don't know how many details you actually need to provide. But yeah, it's something.
Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, if someone didn't want to divulge their details, then you just make up a name. I doubt you need to put, I doubt you need to put, enough like identifiable features like addresses and that sort of thing. But there's also a program specifically designed for women who are currently pregnant and experiencing depression and anxiety symptoms, and that's Mum to Be Mood Booster, which again I'll send in the to include in the show notes. But these are really important resources that kind of in the moment you can access.
Yeah, amazing. Now I'm digressing a little bit, but you did just talk about perinatal anxiety. I think perinatal depression is sort of more well known and we're more aware of the symptoms. Can you explain a little bit more about how, like, the subtle differences that you might notice with perinatal anxiety?
Yeah, so this is really where it really comes down to, is this person making changes in their life and deciding, for example, not to leave the house because a worry, or they are stressing about something that is potentially out of their control, but they are changing the way that they live to mitigate the risk of X, Y, and Z happening. And so where the anxiety comes in, and look, I'm not a psychologist, so this is like the basic sort of, our role as maternal child health nurses is to screen and then refer to specialist services who are going to be far more adept at actually diving into the root cause of these anxieties. But what I say to women is if you're making conscious decisions to not leave the house or to not see family and friends or to disengage from your supports, then this is where this anxiety or this worry might be actually turning into an anxiety, which we could really support you with.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so we have so going back to the practical, tangible tips for women who are listening today, or all parents who want to support their mental health. This episode is brought to you by Baby Bee, Australian-owned and designed prams combining quality, safety and style. Not only does Baby Bee let you try their prams at home with free returns for 9 months, yes, that's 9 months, they also offer an industry-leading 3-year warranty for total peace of mind. With thousands of 5-star reviews, around-the-clock customer care, and up to $300 of free accessories with every pram, what are you waiting for? Go visit www.babybeeonline.com and check them out for yourself. And yes, for listeners of the podcast, there is a 20% discount code. Enter FITBEE, FITBEE 20 at checkout, and T's and C's apply. You've mentioned having a small village, 1 or 2 quality people in your corner to help out.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
Exercise.
Oh, yes.
Or getting fresh air.
Love that.
Exercise. We know the relationship between exercise and mental health, and good mental health is really, really strong. And this doesn't have to be something where you have to sign up for a high intensity training program. You do not have to be going to the gym. I'm talking about getting outside and going for a 20 or 30 minute walk with your pram, getting some building up. And you are the expert in sort of returning back to physical exercise post-birth. But it's about making the small but consistent efforts to move your body and to get those endorphins flowing. And that is, it's these small things. And if you think to yourself, I can't fathom it, the weather is too bad, I can't fathom going for a walk today, then just go and sit outside, get some fresh air. It's so easy to get ourselves into a lull where we just are housebound and literally do not get fresh air for sometimes days on end. And just the act of getting some fresh air and some sunshine, vitamin D, is really, really important. Also being very conscious of what we're eating. as well, and just making sure that we can have as much fresh in our diet as possible. But then also on top of that, having a think about what are some of the foods that like bring me so much joy, or like just spark that little bit of joy that I can very easily bring into my life. And it's just going to give me that little pick me up so that my day is just that little bit brighter. Like it's the really, really small things. It's the small efforts which can make a really, really big difference in the long run.
Yeah, love that.
Sure.
And in terms of exercise, you're right. It's building that consistency. It's building that muscle in terms of, as you said, every day in the afternoon, go and sit in the back garden. And then once you've got the energy, you might decide to just walk around the block. And you're much better off doing 5 minutes every single day than doing 1 hour one day a week and then not doing anything the rest of the week. So it's building that consistency muscle and gradually building on that over time. And I love what you said about finding some food that you love. Is that what you said?
Yeah, because I mean, and what I speak to people about in terms of preparing for parenthood, I speak about like finding something from your 5 senses. So something that you like doing with your body in terms of like movement, something you like to eat, something you like to watch, something you like to smell. And by bringing in these very small things. So think about what's your favorite TV show that like instantly comes on and you think to yourself, oh, I love that. Like you get that zing. Like try and bring that into your life as much as possible. Think about these little actions. What do I love to smell? I love the smell of like the perfume that I had on at my birthday last year, or like something. It's not these big things, or the smell of like chocolate chip cookies in the oven, like which kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone if you also love eating chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
But it's just these small repeated efforts which can really make a big difference in our day to day, because it's self-care is the buzzword of parenthood and early parenthood right now, but it doesn't actually give us any sort of meaningful, tangible information as to like, cool, like self-care is important. Yeah, great. But I've got no time to do that. I
love how you mentioned the 5 senses, and I think that is such an easy, valid point. We get so caught up in just doing our normal day-to-day stuff where we look and we see and we hear. But I remember getting a special silk pillowcase, and for me that was so luxurious, and I just was looking forward to putting my head on that pillow every single day. So it's so soft. So, yeah, I really like that thought of making sure you've got something from each of the 5 senses.
Yep, absolutely. And hopefully these small but significant efforts can really help to prop us up and scaffold us in terms of our mental health moving forward and keeping us as supported as we can.
I caught up with someone recently who was I caught up with someone and they said that they had got their whole house installed. This is taking it to the next level, but with these speakers. And what they do in the morning is put on some really relaxing, calm music, so quiet that you can hardly hear it, but they are swearing by the fact that it makes their whole household much calmer in the morning when they're doing, the rush getting to school and work and all the rest, is having this really, so I guess that's getting into the senses, the hearing sense. So
exactly. Yeah. And music brings a lot to our lives, right? And having a think about what music we gravitated during our pregnancy can really be something that when we're pregnant, there's a lot of things like I remember thinking I've always kind of liked water, but I'm not a swimmer, but I've always liked water. But during my pregnancy, I gravitated so much towards water. And now one way for me to de-stress and kind of just remove myself from the bad day that I've had, if I've had a bad day, is by having a bath or by having a shower. Going back to these things that really we gravitated to in our pregnancy, where I think we really kind of get back to our roots as to what works for us and works for our bodies and works for our mind is a really important kind of step as well.
I guess the challenges with what we're talking about is they're all quite mindful activities. And sometimes when you're caught up in whether or not it's anxiety or feeling down, it's a big, and maybe I'm wrong here, but it's a big step to go from this almost like a subconscious to this conscious line of thinking.
Yeah. And it is like going back to what you were saying before, like you have to, it's like muscle memory. This is not something that you're going to instantly gravitate to just by hearing us talk about it. It's by just slowly bringing these things into your life and making them, it's when you make it a habit that you're kind of searching out for some of these things that it will become more entrenched. And when you do feel like, when you do have moments or times during your parenthood journey where you think all of that stuff is great, but it's just not helping, that's kind of a trigger to go, okay, let's look at this a little bit more and go, have I been feeling like this for a while now? And is this where I can bring some extra sources of support in that could really help me?
Okay. So to dive into it a little bit more as our last point before we finish up, if someone's listening today and they're thinking, they're sort of on the fence, like, oh, should I just try some self-care? Or should I actually speak to someone? What would you recommend to someone listening today?
I would say if someone is asking whether they need extra support, then they probably do. So if someone has that gut instinct of going, oh, am I okay here? Or am I actually, could I benefit from speaking to a friend or speaking to their partner about how they're feeling? Because for myself, I experienced quite severe PND and my partner didn't even know really what my mind was going through. So taking that step, if you're wondering whether you should, then that's probably enough of an indication that you need to. And then bringing someone along on that ride with you. You do not have to go through this solo. So having that, reaching out to those one or two people and then having them in your corner as you then start looking at whether it's doing the mum mood booster, because remembering we've got that source of support right there literally at our fingertips that we could access in the next hour. We could be doing that. And then building that scaffolding. So can I speak to my maternal child health nurse? And sitting down, I've had women that come to me and book additional appointments and they sit down and they go, I don't know how I feel. I just don't feel like myself. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment. And I say, great, so we've got something called an Edinburgh postnatal depression scale, which people can access. They've got one on the Beyond Blue website. You can do these sort of screening tools to get answers so that when you're in a mind fog and you're going, I don't know how I feel about this, I just know that I don't feel 100% like myself, we can kind of go, okay, let's get a little bit more information. And whether it's a conversation with a maternal child health nurse, whether it's filling out an Edinburgh postnatal depression scale on a website, or whether it's doing mum mood booster, kind of starting the ball rolling and then going from there.
Yeah, fantastic. Is there anything else you just want to finish with? Anything we haven't talked about? Any pointers?
Just really recognizing, I think it's important for people to know that they're really not alone in this. 3 to 4 in 10 women are going to experience postnatal depression and anxiety. And that's not taking into account the 10 out of 10 women who are going to have difficult days and tough weeks, but giving ourselves as much time and space to recognize that our mental health is so important and is as important as any other facet in your child's life or your life, really is going to mean that we can take the steps to look after mums better and dads in that initial postnatal period. Yeah,
amazing. So important. Thank you, Claire. How can people come and find you if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah. So the best place is either on Instagram at Safe Hands Parenting. I just have lots of parenting advice, support, and it's basically just reducing your mental load and just giving you little bits and pieces of information that make a meaningful difference in the first 4 years of life as a parent. And then I have a podcast called The Moment, which you were on recently, and you can find The Moment in Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or also on Instagram at themoment.podcast.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Claire. Really appreciate the chat.
No worries. Thank you so much.
And before I sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links, including the links that Claire mentioned in the podcast at fitnessmama.com/podcast. That's it, ladies. Have a fabulous day, and I look forward to you joining me next week for another episode of the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.